Hello, my wonderful third graders. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We are still in Domain 6, the Viking Age, and this is Lesson 7, Saying Goodbye. Who do you think saying goodbye? Some vocabulary words you will hear throughout the read aloud. Exclaimed means cried out or yelled. Example, Fritz surprised us when he read a letter and exclaimed, "I won the contest!" Indistinguishable is an adjective. It describes something impossible to understand, perceive, or tell apart. Lap means to splash. During a cruise this summer, Neela enjoyed looking over the edge to watch the water lap against the side of the ship. Mast is an upright pole in a ship that supports a sail. A sheath is a covering for a sword or a dagger. So what have we learned so far? What happened in Sagas and Swords? If you remember correctly, Bjorn first woke up and was told that it was the day he was going to get his sword. His father was going to make it. Next, he went to the forge with his father, and his father shaped the sword using different pieces of iron that he heated up and then hammered until it became the shape he wanted. And then he dipped the sword in the water to cool it off after it had taken its form. Where will Bjorn and Toli be traveling to? They're going to Iceland. Why are they leaving their homeland? It's become unsafe, right? So they're going somewhere that's safer. Will Toli and Bjorn travel in a cargo ship or a long ship? They're going to travel in a cargo ship. It's also known as a nar. So let's make a prediction. The title of today's story is Saying Goodbye. How do you think Bjorn will feel today when he has to say goodbye? How would you feel if you were Bjorn? So listen carefully to learn if your predictions are correct about how Bjorn will react to saying goodbye to his family. Oh man, this story might be sad. Hopefully I don't start crying. I awoke long before dawn and lay in my bed listening to the sound of breathing. I heard my sister Kita laughing in her sleep and my grandfather snoring. Occasionally I heard Toli mutter some indistinguishable words. This was the day I had dreaded. This was the day when I would leave my family forever and begin a journey of many days of sailing that would take Toli and me across the great ocean of the north. I did not like this day. I wanted to wish it away, but I was powerless to do so. I lay there for the longest time until finally I heard my grandmother begin her morning chores. I dressed myself in the new blue tunic and woolen pants that had been given to me the night before. Toli had received a woolen tunic and pants too. My tunic was edged in yellow cloth and Toli's was edged in red cloth. When our family members presented us with our new clothes, Aunt Kristen, Toli's mother, explained why she had chosen these colors. "I chose red for Toli to match his temper," she said jokingly, "and yellow for Bjorn to match the color of his hair." Once dressed, I helped my grandmother rebuild the fire by placing twigs and then fresh logs on the embers. By the time my father, mother, aunt, and uncle arrived at the hearth, the flames were already burning warm and strong. As usual, the porridge was prepared and the bread dough was placed in the embers on an iron rack to bake. If red is the color that matches Toli's temper, what may that say or tell us about him? What kind of temper did Toli have? Which Viking did you learn about who possibly had red hair and or a red hot temper? Do you remember we learned about Eric the Red and how he was in Iceland, but he got thrown out of Iceland because he murdered somebody. and he went and found Greenland because they kicked him out. So maybe Tully had a similar temper to Eric the Red. The children were awakened and sent off to do their daily chores. Before long, it was time to sit at the hearth for our final meal together. No one said very much. It was clear that although the adults believed that it was safer for us in Iceland, they were also sad to see us leave home. We ate in silence until Kita suddenly exclaimed, I don't know what to name my chicks. Would it be okay if I name one Bjorn and one Tolly? She asked with a serious look on her face. What if they are not roosters? Asked my brother Carl. I don't think they'll mind what we call them as long as it's not dinner, Ornston replied, and we laughed in agreement. Eventually, it was time for Tolly and me to collect the few possessions we owned, now stored in an animal skin, and make our way to the cargo ship. Together, we all trudged through the narrow streets to the wharf. The other boys were already there and were also saying their final farewells. Then, slowly, one by one, they boarded the ship. Tully and I hugged everyone one last time and began to walk towards the waiting sea vessel. Bjorn, you have forgotten something, my father said as he came toward me. It was my sword, Foebiter. I've been carrying it proudly with the rest of my possessions, but as we left the house, Kita ran into my arms and I had quickly placed it on a small table. In my sadness, I had forgotten to pick it up again. I reached out to take it and saw that my father had placed it in a new leather sheath. Your grandfather made this sheath for you, he said, looking at me intently. I wish you well, my son. May the gods be ever at your side. And then he turned and walked away. My grandfather's gift was almost the last straw. I wasn't sure I could hold back from crying any longer, let alone board the ship. I wanted to run to him, but Tully sensed my great sadness, grabbed my arm, and pushed me towards the waiting ship. Neither of us said a word as we stood together for a long while watching the sailors row the cargo ship out to sea and away from our homeland. Tully, will we ever see them again? I asked, not really expecting a reply. If Odin wishes it, Tully replied softly. The saying last straw means the last thing you can handle. You will hear more about the saying later. When I could no longer see the coastline, I began to look around the ship. Our cargo ship was a strong 50-foot vessel, built and designed like all cargo ships, to withstand the mightiest waves. Tully, who loved ships, had already explained to me that once our ship reached deeper waters, the sailors would put away the oars and raise the large square sail. He had also explained that cargo ships were rounder, deeper, and shorter than warships, so they were more able to carry cargo to trade. Why would the warships want to be narrower and longer, right? So that they could travel faster? Tully continued with his lesson on ships. Once we are settled on board, Bjorn, our ships are unique, he had explained. They are powered by both the oar and the sail. This is a cutaway image so you can see inside. So if you look closely, you can see the people standing inside the ship. Do you see the barrels inside the ships? Cargo or goods were carried inside the barrels. Our warships or longships are designed to carry many warriors who can row or sail the ship while staying close to the coastline. At sunset, the warriors row their ships inland and camp for the night. Cargo ships sail farther out into the ocean, but spend the night in a deep water harbor, or if the waves are calm, they will lower the sail and drop the anchor, waiting until sunrise to continue their journey. They try to avoid coming too close to shore so the tide, which comes and goes twice a day, won't push them towards coastal rocks. Do you know why our ship is so strong and powerful? Tully asked. Our ships are so strong and powerful? Tully asked as we stood watching the waves lap against the side of the boat and the seabirds circle overhead. Well, not exactly, I replied. Well, it's because of how they are built, Tully explained eagerly. You see, shipbuilders use long, thin planks of oak wood to make the hull or body of the ship. These planks are fastened to the keel or backbone of the ship and then to each other with iron nails. One plank overlaps the other. The floor timbers are also attached to the keel. Then cross beams are added and the mast is held firmly in place by a heavy timber mounting. I didn't mind that Tully suddenly had so much to say about ships. His constant talking helped to take my mind off my family. I stood beside him for the longest time, listening to the sound of his voice and wishing that I could fly like Thor's hammer back to my family. Were your predictions correct about how Bjorn felt when he said goodbye? Why or why not? What color is the edge of Tully's tunic? It was red. Why is that color chosen for him? To match his temper. What Viking explorer did you learn about that was given a nickname to match his hair color and temper? Eric the Red. How does Kita feel about Tully and Bjorn leaving? What makes you think so? She's sad. She's quiet and says she will name the chickens after them. Why do Bjorn and Tully think and talk about gods like Odin and Thor? They believe in many gods and rely on them for help. They are about to embark on a journey and want protection. Why is Bjorn leaving his homeland even though he would rather stay with his family? It is safer in Iceland than it is in Norway. Were the Viking warships or longships and cargo ships indistinguishable? No. Why or why not? They were made for different purposes and were able to be distinguished or set apart from each other. You can see in the pictures how they all looked different depending on what they were made for. What is the difference between a warship and a cargo ship? Warships were longer and had rails to hold shields. Cargo ships were shorter and deeper and sailed farther out in the ocean, but spent the night in a deep water harbor. Cargo ships were for trade and warships were for raids. Why are Bjorn and Tully traveling on a cargo ship rather than on a warship? They're not going to war, they are relocating to a new land and bringing cargo with them. When Bjorn's father gives him a sheath that his grandfather made for his sword, it almost makes Bjorn cry. Why do you think this kind act makes him feel like crying? Maybe because it really touched him and made him realize that his dad and grandfather really loved him. Maybe it made him think about how he was going to miss them when he left. Bjorn and Tully watch the waves lap against the ship and talk to one another as the cargo ship leaves their homeland. How do you think Tully is feeling? How do you think Bjorn is feeling? Bjorn is sad because he has left his family, but Tully is excited to be on one of the ships he knows so much about. Our word for today is exclaimed. In the read aloud you heard, we ate in silence until Kita suddenly exclaimed, I don't know what to name my chicks. Would it be okay if I name one Bjorn and one Tully? She asked with a serious look on her face. Say the word exclaimed. Exclaimed means said something in a loud and excited manner. When you want to express something loudly or excitedly, use an exclamation mark at the end of a sentence instead of a period. When Mr. Chain finally realized the answer to the riddle, he exclaimed, I got it! Have you ever exclaimed something? What did you say? All right, we're going to use a synonym and antonym activity for follow-up. What does exclaimed mean? Do you remember? It means to say something in a loud and excited manner. So what are some synonyms or words that have a similar meaning to exclaimed? Words like shouted, cried out, called out, yelled, screamed, excitedly. What are some words or phrases you know that are antonyms or opposites of exclaimed? words and phrases like whispered, listened, hushed, quiet. All right, so sayings and phrases. You heard in the read aloud the saying, the last straw. So this is an idiom. An idiom is an expression whose meaning goes beyond the literal meaning of its individual words. They've been passed down orally or quoted in literature and other printed textures, so they're used over and over for years and years. Idioms are often used as figurative language, meaning what is stated is not literally taking place. So it's not actually the last straw. You don't have pieces of straw in front of you or like straws you drink out of in front of you and there's only one left. That's not what it means. Okay? If it was what it means, that would be the literal meaning. Literal means exactly what it says. So if you said, oh, this is the last straw, that means you're picking up the last straw. Okay? But figurative means something different. So what does last straw mean? Have you ever heard someone say that something is the last straw? Maybe someone was mad and they're like, this is the last straw, and I mean it. All right. This idiom refers to the final incident in a string of difficult things that have happened. And the final incident is what causes a person to break down or give up. This idiom comes from the proverb, it is the last straw that breaks the camel's back. According to legend, remember legends are stories that kind of explain things that are handed down. A man put many pieces of straw into a camel's back until the last straw proved to be too much. The weight of the straws broke the camel's back. We know Bjorn has been sad about having to leave his family to go to Iceland. For example, when Bjorn makes his sword, his sweat streams down his face along with his tears. Bjorn's grandfather made him a sheath for the sword, and the last difficult thing that Bjorn thinks he can take. This act of kindness shows that his family loves him, and he does not want to leave his home. Have you ever had an experience where the phrase last straw applies? Have you ever been through a series of difficult events when you finally lost your temper or started to cry? Maybe like your little sister was annoying you so much and they finally like spill your drink or something and you're like, this is the last straw. You have to get out of my room now. I can't take this anymore. A lot of times when people are saying it's the last straw, they also are like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. So what's a time when you would have used that phrase? Either you did use it or you felt that way. Can you think of something? All right, good job, third graders. We only have one more lesson left in this unit, which seems crazy to me, but it's true.